Hey there YouTube, welcome to Draco Ray Gaming. Today we're going to be talking about the BIOS and how to improve FPS in Warzone. We're going to have to do this in sections because there's so many things that help you improve Warzone, starting from the BIOS all the way up into Windows, into the game, from your graphics drivers, and across all of your hardware. So today we're going to focus on a few topics and I'm going to help you improve your FPS. As usual, no BS, no fluff. Here we go. Alright, first thing I want to talk about in the BIOS is, especially if you have MSI or Asus or anything like that, if you try to overclock your CPU, even in Windows, using other software or any software you've downloaded, it's not going to work if your BIOS has the CPU locked. And what you need to look at, say, for example, if you have an MSI BIOS, you're going to look at they have an overclock genie, a precision boost overdrive, as well as a game boost mode. And if you don't have, say, for MSI, for instance, precision boost overdrive enabled, or you have overclocking turned on in the BIOS, it's not going to work at all. No, don't get this confused with memory overclocking, such as XMP, as you see here, and overclocking genie in MSI. These are all just fancy names for overclocking or unlocking your CPU, etc. Now, you may get confused because even on the CPU boxes, I was looking for my CPU box, which I have here. They'll say, unlocked or whatever on it. But if your BIOS is not updated to support the CPU and support the unlocking of the CPU so that it can be overclocked, you're never going to get there in Windows ever, or in your game, or ever see the performance ever. I hope I made my point clear. Now this is talking about memory and CPU, right? So what you have to look at in the BIOS is make sure that you have a precision boost overdrive mode or game boost mode, like you see here, turned on. These top two left ones are really important, say, for the MSI BIOS, because you have game boost mode, which can unlock it, as well as precision boost overdrive mode, as well as the XMP overclocking mode, which are preset profiles for the RAM, for the memory, but you can actually auto set those yourself. You can manually set them, and you don't have to worry about the voltages and all that. They have a lot of predetermined settings. If you do auto overclocking for the memory and you just set it to 3200 megahertz or 3600 megahertz, you'll be absolutely fine. In other words, though, you can also use precision boost overdrive or game boost mode, or whatever the fancy term is for unlocking your CPU or allowing overclocking. You have to have that turned on in the BIOS. So make sure you say, yes, I agree, if I damage my CPU, it's on me, etc. Most of the BIOSes have something like that, and so that's the first thing you really want to do for Warzone, to start increasing FPS. After that, you can start going into Windows once that's set. And I have to say, you also want to make sure that your fan speeds are good and that it's on auto in the BIOS as well, to make sure, which is usually by default, but make sure you have checked that in the hardware monitoring profile to see if your fan speeds are going to auto increase as the heat increases and the overclocking increases. And if you get into Windows, you can right click here and go to Task Manager. You can go into Performance, click CPU, and down here you can actually see what your base speed is, your current speed is, your cores, and your logical processors, even if you don't have any special fancy software, to see what it's currently running at. Typically, I have a 5900X 12-core processor with 24 thread. It's currently running at 415 / base speed of 418. So that's in an overclocked state, because the base CPU, after I threw the box all the way over here, is actually at like a 3.8, I believe. So it's like a 3.7 base speed, up to a 4.8 if needed, and I'm having it run at a base speed of 4.1 now with the game boost mode on or the overdrive mode on. This will increase your FPS in Warzone. It will help out with a lot of other things, and this is where you need to start. And I wish I could do one whole video on how to FPS increase Warzone, but it doesn't work like that, because after you have this foundation, you need this foundation set. Then you can start going into Windows, and I have a Windows 7 skin here that I can flip-flop between Windows 10 and 7. If you ever want to know what that is, comment down below, I'll show you. But what you actually can do after that is then start looking in depth at the rest of your Windows setting, once your BIOS and your hardware are set, into high-performance power plans, your startup services, your background services, and startup applications, as well as a bunch of other things, including NVIDIA control panel and a million other things that I really want to get into. But we're already at about 5 minutes for this, and I hope you stay tuned for part 2, because I have a ton of super secrets to increasing FPS in Warzone. and I'll see you on the next video. Draco Ray, no BS, no fluff. I'm out of here.